Summary of the life and career of Aristotle, icon of ancient Greek wisdom. Chapter 1, Childhood and Family, 384 BC, around 367 BC. Aristotle, one of the greatest intellects of humanity, was born in 384 BC in Stagira, a small city located in the Chalcidice region, about 55 kilometers from modern-day Thessaloniki. This place, with its coastal landscape and close ties to the powerful kingdom of Macedonia, shaped part of his destiny. Aristotle's father, Nicomachus, was not an ordinary man. He was the personal physician to King Amyntas III, the powerful ruler of Macedonia. Nicomachus belonged to the Asclepiad Guild, a prestigious medical association where members proudly claimed descent from the god of medicine, Asclepius. This not only brought social status to the family but also inspired Aristotle, igniting in him a passion for medicine and natural sciences. His mother, Festus, came from Chalcis, a city on the island of Euboea, where her family had deep roots. However, family happiness did not last long. Both Aristotle's father and mother died when he was very young, leaving the boy orphaned in his early years. In that situation, Proxenus of Atarneus, a devoted guardian, took Aristotle under his care. Proxenus was not only a guardian but also the first teacher, teaching him to read, write, and possibly even basic knowledge about medicine and philosophy. Under Proxenus's care, Aristotle may have moved to Pella. Pella was the magnificent capital of Macedonia, where he began to familiarize himself with the royal family, a connection that would profoundly influence his life later on. At Pella, Aristotle was exposed to the court atmosphere and the medical activities that his father had once performed. It was these experiences that planted the seeds for scientific curiosity in him, especially about biology, a field in which he would later leave an indelible mark. From a young age, Aristotle received an excellent education. He learned to read, write, and may have become acquainted with the classic works of Homer, the epic tales of ancient Greece. With the family's medical tradition, he might also have been introduced to basic concepts about the human body and nature. These early lessons not only sharpened his intellect but also laid a solid foundation for Aristotle's great career in philosophy and science later on. Chapter 2, Studying at Plato's Academy, 367 BC, 347 BC. In 367 BC, at the age of 17 or 18, Aristotle left his hometown of Stagira to go to Athens, the brilliant center of knowledge in ancient Greece. There, he joined Plato's Academy, a school founded by the great philosopher Plato, where the most outstanding minds of that time gathered. Aristotle spent nearly 20 years at the academy, starting as a diligent student and gradually becoming a talented teacher. During those years, he built a close relationship with Plato, the teacher he deeply respected. However, Aristotle was not merely a receiver. He began to develop his own philosophical ideas, sometimes conflicting with Plato's views, showing signs of an independent and creative mind. At the academy, Aristotle passionately studied philosophy, mathematics, and natural sciences, fields in which he would leave a profound mark. He not only learned but also laid the first bricks for his own system of thought, especially in logic and metaphysics. During this time, Aristotle began writing his first philosophical works. Eudemus, a profound dialogue about the soul, and Protrepticus, a work encouraging the study of philosophy, are testaments to his early blooming talent. Although influenced by Plato, these works revealed independence in his thinking. This independence was a characteristic that would shape Aristotle's career later on. In 347 BC, Plato died, and Aristotle decided to leave Athens, ending an important chapter in his life. There are many hypotheses about why he left. Some believe that Aristotle was disappointed with the direction of the academy under the leadership of Speusippus, Plato's nephew, who had different philosophical views. Others believe that the rising anti-Macedonian sentiment in Athens, due to the expanding power of King Philip II, the father of Alexander the Great, made Aristotle, with his family ties to Macedonia, feel unsafe. Whatever the reason, leaving Athens was not an end but a new beginning. It opened a phase where Aristotle would freely explore, develop, and perfect his philosophical system. The period at the academy was not only a time of learning but also a place where Aristotle honed his analytical and creative abilities. From here, he carried a rich baggage of knowledge, ready to step into new challenges, leaving a mark not only in philosophy but also in the science and education of humanity. Chapter 3, Travel and Research, 347 BC, 343 BC. After leaving Athens in 347 BC, Aristotle began a journey full of discovery, taking him to Assos, a coastal city in Asia Minor, now part of Turkey. He came here at the invitation of Hermias, the ruler of Assos, a leader who loved philosophy and had a close relationship with Aristotle. During about 3 years in Assos, Aristotle turned to studying marine biology, a field in which he would become a pioneer. With its location near the sea, Assos was an ideal place for him to observe marine species, thereby laying the foundation for the great scientific works later on. His meticulous records about marine animals during this period show a curious mind and an experimental research method rare for that time. However, life in Assos did not remain peaceful for long. Around 341 BC, Hermias was captured and executed by the Persian king. This event left a mark in Aristotle's heart. After this incident, he moved to Lesbos, a nearby island, where he continued his research with Theophrastus, an outstanding student and colleague. Theophrastus would later inherit Aristotle's legacy and strongly develop the field of botany. In Lesbos, Aristotle not only focused on philosophy but also expanded his experimental scientific research. He conducted detailed observations of marine animals. He recorded their anatomy and behavior, tasks that became the foundation for works such as History of Animals, On the Parts of Animals, and On the Generation of Animals. Also during his time in Lesbos, Aristotle married Pythias, the niece or adopted daughter of Hermias. They had a daughter, also named Pythias, marking a stable period in his personal life. Besides biology, Aristotle began studying plants. Although it was Theophrastus who later developed this field more deeply. He also wrote Eudemus, a philosophical dialogue that continued to explore profound themes about the soul and existence. Although many works from this period are no longer intact, they demonstrate a unique combination of philosophy and science in Aristotle's thinking. This period of travel and research was not only a time for Aristotle to cultivate knowledge but also a time for him to affirm himself. He affirmed himself as a pioneering experimental scientist. His observations in Assos and Lesbos laid the foundation for modern biology, while also broadening his philosophical vision, preparing him for the great contributions in the future. Chapter 4, Tutoring Alexander the Great, 343 BC, 336 BC. In 343 or 342 BC, Aristotle's life entered a new and meaningful chapter when he accepted an invitation from King Philip II of Macedonia to become the tutor for the king's son, Alexander, who would later become Alexander the Great. At that time, Alexander was only 13 years old, and Aristotle moved to Mysa, a location near the capital Pella, to begin his teaching work. The teaching period lasted about 2 to 3 years. Although some sources suggest it might have been longer. This was a unique connection between a brilliant philosopher and a future great conqueror, leaving a mark in human history. At Mysa, Aristotle not only imparted knowledge but also shaped Alexander's worldview. He taught the young student about philosophy, ethics, politics, and possibly natural sciences. With a passion for Greek culture, Aristotle encouraged Alexander to view the conquest of the East not only as territorial expansion but also as a mission to spread Greek knowledge and civilization. He gave Alexander a copy of Homer's Iliad with meticulous annotations, as a symbol of the heroic spirit and wisdom he wanted to pass on. These lessons may have profoundly influenced Alexander's later policies. Alexander preserved and spread Greek culture throughout the conquered lands. Aristotle's role did not stop at being an ordinary teacher. He contributed to shaping one of the greatest figures in history, who would change the map of the ancient world. Although no documents record the details of those lessons, we can imagine that Aristotle brought to Alexander not only knowledge, but also a vision of a broader world. This relationship also reflects the influence of philosophy in shaping leaders, a testament to the power of knowledge. In 336 BC, when Alexander ascended the throne after the death of Philip II, Aristotle's mission in Macedonia ended. He returned to Athens, bringing with him valuable experience from those years of teaching. This period was not only a turning point. a turning point in Alexander's life but also a time when Aristotle accumulated more life experience and thought, preparing for his peak career at the Lyceum. From a teacher in Mysa, he contributed to planting the seeds for a great empire, while affirming his position as an outstanding educator in history. Chapter 5, Founding the Lyceum and Peak Career, 335 BC, 323 BC. In 335 BC, Aristotle returned to Athens after Alexander ascended the throne and began his conquest campaigns. As a metic, a resident foreigner, he was not allowed to own land, so he rented the Lyceum, an area with a gymnasium and gardens, to establish the peripatetic school. The name peripatetic originated from Aristotle's habit of walking while teaching, a unique style reflecting the dynamism in his thinking. Over the next 12 years, the Lyceum became a leading center of knowledge, where Aristotle reached the peak of his career with contributions that transcended his era. At the Lyceum, Aristotle taught and researched in many fields: philosophy, ethics, politics, metaphysics, biology, and literature. This was the period when he composed classic works that shaped Western thought. Physics explored the laws of motion and causality. Metaphysics delved deep into the nature of existence. Nicomachean ethics discussed virtue and happiness. Politics analyzed forms of government. On the soul studied psychology, and poetics laid the foundation for literary theory. These works were not only the crystallization of Aristotle's intellect but also an invaluable legacy for posterity. During this time, Aristotle's personal life also experienced changes. His wife, Pythias, passed away, and he began a relationship with her Pilus of Stagira, who bore him a son, Nicomachus, the person he named his famous ethical work after. The Lyceum was not only a place of teaching but also a center for experimental research. Aristotle organized a large library and a collection of animal and plant specimens, encouraging students to observe and experiment. This method pioneered modern science. Under Aristotle's guidance, the Lyceum attracted students from all over Greece, becoming a symbol of knowledge and creativity. He not only imparted knowledge but also ignited the spirit of exploration, laying the foundation for the scientific method later on. This period was the most brilliant time in Aristotle's career, where he was both a philosopher, a scientist, and an outstanding educator. He left an indelible mark in human history. Chapter 6, Final Years and Death, 323 BC, 322 BC. In 323 BC, the death of Alexander the Great marked a turning point in Aristotle's life. Anti-Macedonian sentiment erupted fiercely in Athens, and Aristotle, with his close ties to the Macedonian royal family, became a target of hostility. He was accused of impiety, possibly related to a poem he wrote praising Hermias, who had once been executed by the Persians. Facing the risk of prosecution, Aristotle decided to leave Athens to protect himself. He went to Chalcis, Euboea, where his mother's family lived, with the famous saying, "I will not allow the Athenians to commit a second crime against philosophy," an allusion to the execution of Socrates nearly a century earlier. In Chalcis, Aristotle lived his final days in relative peace. He passed away in 322 BC due to natural causes, at the age of 61 or 62. In his will, he appointed Antipater, a general of Alexander, as executor, and requested to be buried next to Pythias, the wife he loved. His works were passed on to Theophrastus, his successor at the Lyceum, and later to Neleus of Sepsis. Although he left Athens, Aristotle's legacy did not fade. It was preserved and developed by his students and successors, becoming the foundation for Western philosophy and science. Aristotle's final years were not only the end of a journey but also the beginning of his eternal influence. From Stagira to Athens, from Mysa to the Lyceum, he lived a meaningful life, leaving a legacy that shaped human civilization through many centuries. Chapter 7, Eternal Legacy. Aristotle, living from 384 to 322 BC, was one of the most outstanding minds in human history, leaving an indelible mark through his works in philosophy, science, and art. His legacy not only shaped Western thought but also became an endless source of inspiration for posterity. In the field of philosophy, Aristotle laid the foundation for logic with the syllogistic reasoning method, systematized in the book series Organon. This was a breakthrough, creating the foundation for Western logic that lasted for centuries. In metaphysics, he delved deep into the nature of existence, matter, and causes in metaphysics. The concept of the unmoved mover, the ultimate cause of all motion, profoundly influenced later philosophy and theology, from the Middle Ages to modern times. In ethics, Aristotle built a theory of virtue in Nicomachean Ethics, emphasizing that humans achieve true happiness, or eudaimonia, through the practice of virtues, balancing between reason and emotion. In politics, he analyzed forms of government, proposing a mixed constitution combining monarchy, aristocracy, and democracy, while emphasizing the role of education in building a just society. These ideas still hold value in current political discussions. In science, Aristotle was a pioneer in biology. He conducted detailed observations and classifications of animals, recorded in History of Animals, laying the foundation for zoology. Although some of his physical views, such as the geocentric model of the universe in physics, were later disproved, his method of empirical observation paved the way for modern science. In art, his Poetics analyzed tragedy, exploring the role of art in evoking emotions, becoming the foundation for literary theory. Aristotle left behind a treasure trove of classic works, including Organon, Metaphysics, Nicomachean Ethics, Politics, Poetics, Physics, History of Animals, and On the Soul. These books were not only the crystallization of his intellect but also an invaluable source of knowledge for later generations. His legacy transcended his era. His works were preserved by Islamic scholars during the Middle Ages, then reintroduced to Europe, contributing to shaping scholasticism and the Renaissance. His influence spread through philosophy, science, and theology, with his systematic thinking method and emphasis on experimentation still inspiring thinkers today. Aristotle was not only a philosopher but also a great scientist and educator, leaving a solid foundation of knowledge that shaped human civilization through millennia.